All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. Going to be getting into the Week 15 lineup builder here for you guys, where I typically would talk about my favorite ownership fades and leverage plays, but I actually think the ownership is pretty darn solid this week. If you guys watch the core plays video, not much is going to change from that. We'll talk about some stacks and some values that we are getting, but overall, this slate does seem to be somewhat more of a straightforward slate. The difference is going to be in the quarterbacks that we're going to be on, so we'll touch on all that, and with that, let's go in and get into it. So yes, guys, just once again, I do want to kind of recap the core plays I'm looking at and really the first build that I gave you guys in the core plays video that I put out. So really, guys, to me, Woody Marks, Devin Neal, I like them in my builds because that does allow me then to fit the stud receivers into our builds. Now, it does depend on whether or not you want to go like JSN instead of Terry McLaurin. If you do that, you're going to punt at the tight end position, which I'm fine with, and then you're going to get into a little bit worse of a flex option, which I'm kind of okay with there as well. Like if you guys want to get to JSN, just keep it safe with the 3 easy core plays at receiver, you can do that. But this is kind of the slate that's being presented to us, and so I don't want to deviate from this too much. Now, some people might be like wondering which quarterbacks we should be on. Marcus Mariota's in there. Maybe they're a little bit worried about that. And if we look at his ownership, it's not like egregious, guys. Marcus Mariota's coming in at about 10%, which I think is correct. Like Dart is going to be the quarterback that's getting a decent amount of ownership there at 11. He's a decent play. I think he makes sense in cash as well. Both of them are going up against each other. We're not too worried about the weather. Looking at the game total, 46.5 total points. We do like that game total there as well. So overall, I do think it ends up being a pretty darn good spot for both those quarterbacks. I just like the price difference with Mariota, and I do think he's easier to stack Mariota with like Terry McLaurin and or Deebo Samuel if you guys want to get there. Those two players specifically, and I do think Terry McLaurin is going to be a decent value for us on this slate simply with like Zach Ertz being out as well. Like that's going to increase some targets to him, but he's coming in under 10%. I kind of think his ownership should be like the 3rd or 4th highest among the receiver positions. So I do think there's just a little bit of stacking leverage right there just with Mariota and or Terry McLaurin. You could also go with Deebo. I don't mind Deebo, but also I feel like Deebo's, it's probably correct. Like maybe it'd be closer to 10%. I do like the idea of getting into at least one of those two in a decent amount of my builds. Now from there, guys, there really isn't much in regards to quarterback leverage. I will say some of the stud quarterbacks that we are getting on the slate, like for example, Matthew Stafford, he's coming in a little bit lower owned than I think he should, under 10%. Joe Burrow's also coming in lower owned than he should, under 10%. And then Brock Purdy as well. Like I think all these players are actually decent leverage opportunities, and they're pretty darn easy to stack. And I think that's really where we're going to get our leverage is with these stacks that we can implement. And so one player that I like a decent amount on this slate, guys, is Ricky Pearsall. Coming in off of a bye week for them. I think he's going to slot into the receiver number 1 role once again here for the San Francisco 49ers, like he started the season out with, and he was crushing in that role. Now, you might argue that the reason why he was really successful is because George Kittle was banged up, which I think would be a fair argument, but Juwan Jennings has been a little bit more on the fortunate side in regards to touchdowns, whereas Ricky Pearsall has been open a bunch, and the ball just hasn't come his way. And so I just think coming in off a bye week, there's going to be a focus to get Ricky Pearsall the ball a little bit more so, assuming he's 1 more week healthy. And so coming in at 3.6%, I'm going to be double that, especially with some of those Brock Purdy builds that I'm getting. I'm going to be stacking the quarterbacks about 10% in regards to the ones that I'm going to be on. And so Brock Purdy about 10%, Ricky Pearsall I'm going to be on about 7%. Probably will have a little bit of George Kittle with my Brock Purdy builds. Now for Stafford, we know the stack, guys. It's pretty darn simple. We're either going Puka Nacua and or Devontae Adams. Adams is coming in a little bit lower owned than he probably should be given his touchdown upside. And so I think there's a little bit of value in there with Adams in regards to like maybe gain some leverage on the field. At the same time, I think if you're trying to gain leverage on the field while also trying to get to like a Matthew Stafford stack in that extremely high scoring game, I mean, that's the appeal, guys. 55 total points with the Rams being 6-point favorites. That's going to mean a lot of touchdowns are scored there. They're a touchdown favorite, which is crazy. And so we get Colby Parkinson, who's playing a decent amount of snaps at 3.2 at 2% ownership. That seems like a great buying opportunity there, guys. So I definitely want to be overweight on him. He did come through for us last year. Don't want to double dip too much. That's really the concern for me there with him, but I do think that ends up being a pretty good spot. And just for what's worth, guys, like Kyron Williams, I don't necessarily need to go crazy with this, but let's get to 10% on Kyren Williams. There's a lot of touchdown equity in him. Okay, he has almost like a 70% chance to score a touchdown. Projected for 12.8 DFS points. He's not really losing that much work to Blake Corum, although Blake Corum has looked pretty darn good as well. Like if you're not playing Kyren, you should probably get into some Blake Corum as well. So I know the price tag is juiced up a little bit for Kyren because it's a good matchup, because it's a high scoring game, but it's not like Kyren's playing poorly. Maybe he continues to lose work to Blake Corum, but I don't mind being overweight on him in this extremely high scoring game. I think that ends up being a pretty good spot there as well. And then kind of the last player that I think we should be getting to is going to be Mitchell Tinsley. Now, I do think his ownership is going to update. T. Higgins has been ruled out, and so I expect Tinsley to get about 50% or so of the snaps. And if that does end up happening, he's a little bit appealing in stacks with Joe Burrow. You know, he has a decent value rating at about 2.3. Not a lot, though. Like you could just go Andre Yoshivas, and maybe overall this helps Chase Brown a little bit more. But I think Mitchell Tinsley at the near min is somewhat appealing, especially in a decent matchup there against Baltimore in another game that's projected to be pretty darn high scoring. And then for what it's worth, guys, just from a like value standpoint, Kenny Pickett at 4.5 is somewhat appealing. No one's really on him. Don't need much for him. Need him to throw 2 touchdowns, which against the Eagles defense might be asking a decent amount, but there's a little bit of a revenge game narrative there. I'm not expecting much, but it is a value play, and you know I'd never hate someone at 4.5 that really just needs 2 touchdowns to hit value for us. So he's okay, but not necessarily someone I need to go crazy with. And then really, guys, one other play that I think is somewhat appealing, and no one's going to be on him, and that's going to be Troy Franklin. So Troy Franklin was seemingly the receiver number 1 for like a month there for the Denver Broncos, where it was like a 1A, 1B situation, but he was seemingly in the 1A situation between him and Courtland Sutton. Then over the last 2 weeks, he actually was being outsnapped by Pat Bryant, and that was following the bye week. Now, I don't know if something happened to Troy Franklin or why that occurred, why he was getting outsnapped by Pat Bryant, but Pat Bryant's going to be out in this game. And although it is a difficult matchup here against the Green Bay Packers, I think this is kind of an appealing spot because the Packers are probably going to scheme to take away mostly Courtland Sutton, and RJ Harvey will likely have a tough time rushing the football. Likely, we'll see. And so I do think that leads to Troy Franklin having a decent spot. Maybe it's Evan Ingram instead, but I do think we can at least predict that Troy Franklin's going to get enough snaps for us to have him be an appealing play. And so this really becomes like the leverage spot here, guys, like 1.7%. It doesn't take that much to be overweight on him. It's not a game that people are going to want to attack. It's a very low game total, 43 total points. But I also think there's a little bit of value in there. I think it's interesting. And so, guys, just real quickly, we're just going to talk about some of the values that we are getting. And literally, the best values are going to be those top-end receivers. That's how, like, clearly they're the best place. So not only do they rank out of some of the better values, they're obviously going to be projected to score the most points. And so it is a really receiver top-heavy slate. We look at the running back at value, Christian McCaffrey, then Woody Marks, then Jahmyr Gibbs. So Woody Marks is a chalk. He should be. If RJ Harvey does get 60+% of the work again and gets around 20 opportunities, he probably is a little bit undervalued, but I would rather get to Kyren again. I think that ends up being a better spot for us just in general. Josh Jacobs might actually be a little bit overowned. He's dealing with a knee injury. We might see more of Emmanuel Wilson, although Josh Jacobs does hold a bunch of touchdown equity. Like if we look at it, guys, he has a 0.8% chance to score a touchdown. So like he probably does score a touchdown. If he does do that, he's going to hit value, but that's kind of the risk there. We look at Devin Neal. Devin Neal I really like. I wish the data was liking him more. I just really like the price tag. I like who he allows me to get into the rest of my builds. And then from there, guys, like maybe Kyle Manon, guys, a little bit lower owned than he should be. Okay, in this game here against Cleveland, I would imagine both him and DeAndre Swift get a lot of work. And then really the only decent spot that I like in regards to price as well is Chris Rodriguez. Okay, this is a decent game total, 46.5 total points. Rodriguez is probably going to get close to 50% of the work. We do have him projected to get around 13 opportunities, which is not all that much, and only about 50 yards total. So like his projection is probably right, but if he punches in a touchdown, then he's clearly a great play. And I do think given the matchup with the Giants, there's actually going to be a good opportunity for him to score a touchdown. And so in a lot of my builds, I have been choosing between Chris Rodriguez or Marcus Mariota as like the value play I want to get to. If I'm not going Mariota, I'm trying to get to Jackson Dart. So let's just get into a quick lineup run here for you guys. Only going to do 20 lineups here. Just see what's spitting out to us as the current best builds for week 15. That could change come tomorrow. And so here we go. The top lineup as it currently sits right now would be Mariota, McCaffrey, Kenneth Walker. Obviously, Kenneth Walker, a GPP only play, does hold upside each and every week, but also I don't feel like we necessarily need to get out of our way to target him. If you're paying up for a defense, you are paying up for the Jaguars. I mean, the Jaguars are going against the Jets, who are on their third string quarterback, and they don't have their starting tight end. And so that's... I think we want to get to the Jaguars the most, but also I think just punting to like the Raiders makes a bunch of sense. But getting to Woody Marks, getting to Harold Fannin, Jaden Higgins is at a good price tag. I don't mind that. But my kind of issue with this first build is I want to begin to Puka and or some of the other studs that are on the site. Like I want to get to at least two of, I would say, Puka, JSN, or Jamar Chase in all my builds. And that would actually be a rule that I'm going to go ahead and set here. Okay, so that's going to be a grouping that I make. So, for example, I'd be like, I want at least two of, and it's pretty simple, JSN, Puka, and Jamar Chase, add group in all my builds. Now, it's going to force probably a lot of quarterback stacks with that, and I'm fine with that. I think that ends up being decent. But again, I do like Dart and Mariota a lot as the quarterbacks there. And so the slight adjustment that's making now is that we got JSN, Chase in this build. We're getting to Mariota with Terry McLaurin in there, so very similar to the lineup I showed you guys. It is choosing to pay up for CMC. I don't necessarily love that. I don't like getting to Van Jefferson there. If we could get to Mitchell Tinsley, I would like that better. I'd probably just go down from Mike Gesicki here to AJ Barner. Then we could go up. Then we could go up from Van Jefferson to Mitch Tinsley. I think that ends up working a little bit better. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. Appreciate you being here. Make sure to leave a like on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you guys have not done so before. If you guys would like access to that 9-to-5 NFL DFS lineup builder or NFL DFS DraftKings cheat sheet, head on over to 9to5sports.com. Get access to that tool plus all the other tools available on the website for a low monthly cost, $10 a month. Appreciate you guys being here. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.